Welcome back to the channel. This conversation is specifically about tooling within the large language model ecosystem. If you're trying to build an app with large language model, be it some sort of a RAG architecture or an agent architecture, what you might have realized is there's a bunch of options out there, and each of these options are missing one or the other capability. If you go via a cloud provider, and we'll talk about all of them, if you go via a cloud provider, take all of their tooling, you'll realize that it's kind of missing some integrations if you want to play with different models which are not present in their ecosystem, and then you have to go through a loop. If you're trying to build tooling which is like observability, something like Langsmith, which Langchain offers, then you're stuck with them, but you are not able to use tooling from the cloud provider. So there's some sort of a jungle running around, and I want to talk about some of those aspects and why it is important to discuss this right now, because this could lead to a design disaster later on. So this conversation is just sharing of experience around trying to build generative AI applications. All right. So there's a service called AWS Bedrock, and AWS Bedrock essentially provides you a lot of foundation models, and you can select model, you can do customization, you can do RAG, you can do agents, pretty much a lot of that stuff you can do here. It's a pretty good service. Second, they have very recently introduced a service called Q, which can do a bunch of options. It's like an agentic service. It can connect to QuickSight, it can provide business integration, developer integration, tons of different aspects. It's kind of a building your own assistant to power your business. Then you can go into Microsoft stack, where you have Azure ML Studio, and Microsoft is not still in the game of building their own LLM. I don't think they'll be there at all. And given their partnership with OpenAI, I think it's just natural that they'll bring that and leverage that and start to sell it. So they are more business focused, but the tool sets are extremely interesting and rich. By the way, AWS also has an LLM. I don't know if it's an LLM or not, but they call it a title model. Now, shifting the focus to frameworks like Langchain, which is very quickly becoming the de facto standard using which you can build, observe, and deploy. And then you can do a bunch of stuff around the collaboration, testing, deployment, all of that. So everything is nicely baked into, I would say, Langchain as a whole package library. They have also gone pricing. There's Langsmith is currently priced. And then there are additional services or products that they are coming, which is not present, which is LangGraph, which is for agents. So they are also doing that. Then you have the Lama index of the world, which is again playing similar battle, trying to provide tools to integrate your data and trying to provide you the LLM based outcomes, which could be either in the form of a QA, structured extraction, chat, semantic search, or agents. That's the that's the game that these guys are essentially playing. And then you go to Google, and then you have again, Google has its own models. Gemini has a bunch of tool chains around Vertex AI and all of that. So what do you actually use? For most people, the easiest approach is actually none of these. And they just want to build a RAG architecture where they can hit OpenAI endpoint using an API key, which is very easily available, great models, and just start to build it. But then as you go more deeper in that road or in that rabbit hole, what you realize is you need something like Langchain. And why do you need it? Because you need the whole stack for it. You're not just building, you need to do observability, you need to manage deployments and stuff. And now when you bring your traditional observability stuff into all of this game or deployment practices, what you will find is that some of these libraries are so young that the security mechanisms are not supporting. So for example, it could be AWS Bedrock, where you need to connect to LLMs, languages in a certain way. And if you're trying to use Bedrock models, then you have to put some, code around getting it to work nicely with Langchain and how to play with that. And then getting Bedrock models to work nicely with Lama index is another problem. Now, if you want to go to Gemini or AWS and still try to connect to a model hosted in Bedrock, it's really difficult. So the interoperability landscape is not very strong in this, and that's a challenge. So if you are, or your business or your organization or your startup is, or you yourself are trying to build apps that are powered by large language models, a significant amount of research should go into understanding, evaluating, and selecting the right tool for it. Like for example, agenta.ai, this is a framework which I stumbled upon few days back. Looks just amazing. It just beats things right out of the block. Can give you evaluation results, endpoints, A/B testing, etc. And it kind of helps you get agent stack out there. Then you have LangGraph, which is okay. I don't think it's LangGraph which I was trying to talk about, but there's another framework which can do a lot of stuff, drag and drop. So Langflow, sorry about that. I should have done more research before talking about this. Yeah. So this is now drag and drop tooling. So one approach is you can go via the code route. This is a low code, no code route. And the integration ecosystem is already complex. And then on top of it, agents are coming. So it's becoming a, framework jungle, to so as to speak. And the key message here in this short video is that don't get tangled up in the jungle. Try and make sure you have a couple of things very straightened out. What sort of questions or what sort of user questions are you interested in answering? I know it sounds like LLMs can do everything, but it would be really great to narrow it down. Like, do you want to focus on summarization? Do you want to focus on information retrieval? Do you want to focus on search? That will help down selecting the right tool and building the right observability. And then the domain also plays a significant role in there. Like if you are into completely generation things like content creation, maybe that it's not significantly important if the quality or creativeness of the response is higher. But if you are into something like a research, then you don't want creative answers, right? You want precise answers. So all of those kind of factors down later. So try and narrow down the kind of questions you are trying to do based on the domain you are. That's point number one. Point number two is when you are building RAG architecture, try and understand that prompts are still away. There's more advanced frameworks evolving. So whatever you do, try and measure it. Prompts are not interoperable with different LLMs, so they are not portable essentially. So if you have a prompt working for a single LLM, it will not work the same way for another LLM. Will require certain tweaks. So make sure you build some sort of a library or a prompt store where you can play an experiment and parallelly find a way to measure the responses. The measuring part is the most difficult part of the conversation. Again, if you are into something which is very creative, you can always go into a human in the loop conversation, but for most conversations, it will be very difficult to have a human validate response each time. So how do you measure your responses for an LLM, specifically if you are into a critical domain, is a very, very deep area, and that's an area which should be focused upon. All right. So that was it for this video, the 3 key learnings which I have had in my short experience building LLM apps. Stay tuned to the channel. If you have liked this conversation, hit the thumbs up. Until next video, bye.